Aham Sharanam Ram Krishna Sharanam Ram Krishna Sharanam Sharane Nam Gurave Namo Shri Gurave Namo 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 Shri Gurave Namo Shri Gurave Namo Shri Gurave Namo Namo Ram Krishna Sharanam Ram Krishna Sharanam Ram Krishna Sharanam Sharane Ram Krishna Jaya Jaya 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 Ram Krishna Sharanam Ram Krishna Sharanam Ram Krishna Sharanam Sharane Ram Krishna Sharanam Ram Krishna Sharanam Ram Krishna Sharanam Sharane.
Om ya pritira vivekanam vishayeshwanapayini tvamanusmarata same hrudayan mapasarpatu tvameva mata cha pita tvameva bandhus cha sakha tvameva vidya dravinam tvameva sarvam mama deva deva. That intense love which the ignorant bear towards the objects of this world, may I have that same intensity of love for thee. For thou art my mother, thou my father, thou my only friend and companion. Thou art my wealth and my only knowledge. Thou art my all in all, O God of gods. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat. Om peace, peace, peace be unto us all. So this morning is question and answers. And what I usually do, I'm not going to do today. That is, what I usually do with question and answers is I give people time to think of questions while I speak on some subject. But this has been announced for a month now. So if nobody has questions, we'll just sit here quietly. So I'm hoping that somebody has a question on some spiritual or spiritually related topic. And when you have a question, please raise your hand, and then Binky here will give you the mic, because this is both live streamed and it's kept on the internet, and so without the question, then the answer doesn't have a context. So we need to capture the question as well as the answer, as well as people who are in the audience. Some of us are older and don't hear so well, so we need to hear the question also. So, yeah, Deepak. And then Simanti.
Swamiji, we Hindus normally keep a shrine in our home, but I don't think this is common in other religions. So could you please talk to us about where it helps and where it doesn't?
Yes, good. That's a good question about keeping a personal shrine. Let me first correct an assumption that you made that in other religions they don't do that. You're used to America and probably some other countries where you have been. But there are other traditions and other parts of traditions where it is common to keep a shrine. In the Christian tradition, for instance, in the Eastern Orthodox tradition, particularly in Russia, when it was a strongly Christian country, it may become again, but it was before the revolution, it was a strongly Christian country. It was traditional in a Russian home to have a shrine in the front room, where whenever you would leave the home, you would turn and bow and pray to the shrine. And when you came back, that was the first thing that you did. And so in the Russian Orthodox tradition, it was typical to have an icon, and maybe a candle also with the icon. There's some other Christian homes where they do that. In the Protestant tradition, because it was, in general, the Protestant Christian movement was anti-ritual. So there you don't find it common. They might have pictures on the wall, a picture of Christ or so forth, but in the Protestant Christian tradition, for the most part, with exceptions, but for the most part, such things were seen as illustrations, not as something to worship. Because part of the Protestant Reformation in Christianity was to go back to some of the Judaic, that is the Jewish roots of Christianity, where there was a prohibition of image worship. And so one of the criticisms of Catholicism was, oh, they're image worshipers. They worship statues and pictures and things. We don't do that. So you don't find in Protestant homes generally shrines, as it was against the very foundation of Protestantism. But so in some Christian homes you do find shrines, and at an earlier time it was common, and in countries like Russia it was practically universal among religious people. In Buddhist homes you'll often find a shrine also. You would a religious Buddhist home, you would expect to find a shrine. And of course Buddhism grew out of Hinduism, so common roots. In fact, if you look at Tibetan Buddhist puja, because they have extremely extensive puja, it being a tantric Buddhist tradition, their puja has many similarities with our puja. So Buddhist tradition, the Christian tradition, and the Jewish tradition, in an observant Jewish family, they wouldn't often have a shrine because, again, they don't believe in image worship and things like that. But they would have on the door, they would have mezuzah, I think it's called a mezuzah, on the entryway to the house, which had a scripture in it to remind them of their a scriptural statement in it, to remind them of their Jewish heritage and belief. So some other traditions do have the tradition, and in the modern age, this idea of having a shrine in the home has spread widely through New Age thinking, through the spread of Hinduism and Buddhism in the West, as well as New Age thought, which is often Christian in focus, but influence is largely Vedanta. The founders of New Age thought had a strong influence from Swami Vivekananda. And though followers of New Age traditions like Unity, the Church of Religious Science, etc., the followers don't often know it because it was not publicized, but the founders of those traditions were profoundly influenced by Swami Vivekananda, which is documented. It's not rumor, but it's documented. It's just that the Christian Science, not influenced by Swami Vivekananda, but it was influenced by the Bhagavad Gita and the Upanishads. But the founders of these traditions felt that if they presented themselves as influenced by Hinduism, then Christians wouldn't follow them, and so they sort of kept that influence quiet. In fact, the first edition of Mary Baker Eddy's Bible, on Christian Science, It had a number of quotations from the Bhagavad Gita and other Hindu scriptures, but the second edition took all of those out because, again, it was found that if she was going to present this as a form of Christianity, she couldn't present it as influenced by Hinduism. So, again, coming back to now to the heart of your question, that's just correcting the idea that outside of Hinduism people don't keep shrines. The keeping of a shrine is a very great tradition and a very helpful tradition. In fact, Sri Ramakrishna, when he would go to devotees' homes in Calcutta, this again was a time of the British Raj, and many Hindus in India, especially in Bengal, because that was the center at that time in the 1800s of the British Raj, were greatly influenced by Western ways, and so he would go to people's homes, and some people they wouldn't have pictures of, they were Hindus, so there'd be no pictures of Hindu deities anywhere, but there'd be a picture of the Queen, and the Queen Victoria, and other such figures. So Sri Ramakrishna would say that a good Hindu has pictures of gods and goddesses and deities in their home. So the idea of having a shrine, one thing that it does, it gives a focal place to your home. The old traditional idea in India was that you didn't build a home for yourself, you built a home for God. And then you lived there also. But you built the home for God. And so that idea of keeping a place, whether it's in a room that's used for other things, or for those who have the money to do it, in a separate room which is just for the shrine. And then many people, American and people of American descent and Indian descent in America, who have a closet that instead of hanging their clothes there, they don't have a room separate for a shrine, but they keep a closet for the shrine with the door open and the pictures and candle and incense and so forth. So keeping a shrine is very helpful because, again, it gives a sacred center to your home. And you can populate it with sacred items of your choice. It's something that, in a Ramakrishna Mission ashrama, we always have Sri Ramakrishna, sometimes Holy Mother, and sometimes Swami Vivekananda, but always Sri Ramakrishna, because we're the Ramakrishna Mission and he's the center of our life. But in your home, if you're devotees of Ramakrishna, you have a picture of Ramakrishna, but you also, maybe your family deity or your own personal deity is Krishna or Shiva or Durga, or some other aspect of God. And maybe they're saints that you're fond of. Even if you're a devotee of Ramakrishna, it may be that you're fond of Shirdi Sai Baba or Ramana Maharshi, or Papa Ramdas, and such great saints, modern as well as ancient. And so the home shrine is a place with the center of your personal spirituality. You make it personalized. Again, in the Ramakrishna ashrama, we're doing it for the Ramakrishna tradition. This is not my personal shrine. This is not Swami's shrine. This is the Vedanta Society of Greater Houston's shrine, and it's for everybody. And we always, in our centers, keep Ramakrishna, Holy Mother, and Swamiji as the central focus, and we don't clutter it with lots of other deities and so forth. I don't mean clutter in a negative way, but I mean we don't. This is our main focus. We often may have a Ganesha. Sometimes we'll have a Shiva Lingam, etc. But the main focus is that. But your home shrine is a place to make personal, where you can go for your daily devotions. Let me add this in. Another reason for keeping a personal shrine is that if you sit in the same place every day, that place acquires an association in your own mind. But it's not just in your mind. There's an objective association also, a mental atmosphere that grows. Talking just of the association in your own mind first, researchers found many years ago, I read this maybe 40 years ago, the researchers at the United States Air Force Academy in what you can call it, Colorado. I forget the name of the town right now. I know it well, but it's not Colorado Springs. Yes, thank you, Colorado Springs. At the U.S. Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs, researchers found that if students kept a place in their dorm room, say usually their desk, kept that just for study. If you're going to play games, if you're going to sit and talk on the telephone to your friends or your mother, if you're going to do other things, if you're going to read magazines or whatever you might do in your room when you're sitting, don't do it there. The desk is only for study. They found that that was extremely helpful. Why? Because an association grew in the mind through that practice that when I sit at the desk, it's meant for doing homework, not doing other things. Otherwise, of course, this was before the age of personal computers. If it was 40 years ago, which I think it was, at least maybe 45 years ago. It was when I was a young monk. And nowadays with personal computers, you think, well, now I'm going to do my homework as a student, and first thing you do is open up solitaire or other games and things and play that until the mind is completely exhausted and you can't do anything else, so you're so bored with distractions that you might as well do homework now, but the brain is already dead from too much distraction. No, you sit there, this is the place for your homework, this is where you do homework. The same principle applies with the place for your prayer. If you go to the same place, and again, I don't mean rigidly so. If sometimes you want to meditate outside on the deck or something like that, that's fine. But in general, this is the place where you practice your devotions, where you say your prayers, where you do your japa, where you surrender yourself to God and so forth. Then an association grows in your own mind that when I sit here, I'm not sitting here to talk to the grandkids. I'm not sitting here to play on the computer. I'm not sitting here to do other things. I'm sitting here to think of God and to direct my mind towards God. That association grows. And so the amount that one wants to develop the shrine is up to you. One danger in shrines is that there's a tendency in some of us to go on making it more and more complicated. So soon we've got so many things on the shrine that just keeping it clean is a problem. There's so many things to pick up and dust and everything that you finally decide, oh, why bother? Just let the dust to sit there. There are too many things, I have other things to do. Or if you start by lighting a candle and waving some incense, and that's fine, anyone can do that. But then you're thinking, well, let me do a little puja, and that's fine, you can do that. And then you think, well, let me do a little more puja, let me make it a little more complicated, let me make a little more offerings, and then okay, and then you start thinking, well, I can do this also, and pretty soon you've complicated your life so much that you don't even want to go and do the puja. So one thing with the shrine is to keep it simple. Keep it sacred, but keep it simple. It's much better to spend half an hour every day in front of your shrine, or even 15 minutes every day in front of your shrine, rather than 3 hours one day, and the rest of the week you think, I just don't have time for this. I can't spend so much time in front of the shrine, so I don't go at all. 15 minutes a day is far better than that, than 3 hours once in a while. So keep your time in front of the shrine as simple as you need to, so that you can do it every day. And someday if you feel like doing more, fine, do more. But don't make that a commitment that then you can't live up to. So doing a little bit is better than doing a lot. And keeping it simple is better. So again, it brings a focus. So I said I would just say one more word and see if more questions. I said that there's the personal association, but I said there's an objective association also. Sri Ramakrishna used to say that anywhere where many people have come and prayed to God, there's a special manifestation of divine power and divine presence there. And that's why you feel, when you go into old temples, old churches and so forth, you feel a special atmosphere. That it's not just subjective. There's an objective power which develops there. And so in your own home also, by keeping a shrine and keeping it devotedly, and doing what you can, again, within your personal limitations of time and energy, you keep something up regularly there. It forms a sacred association in your mind, but it also brings a blessing to the house itself. There's an objective factor to spiritual things as well. And so it's not only good for you, it is good for you, it's not only good for you, it's good for the family, good for the home, and through the objective association. So, yes, Swapna. Okay, then I'll come to you. But first, Swapna.
Maharaj, I have two questions actually. One is a follow-up of Deepak's question,
Okay.
and one a personal question. The follow-up is, Maharaj, you know that you talked about the shrine making it complicated, like we keep on adding things. Now, it is a very common tradition amongst Indians, Hindus especially, that when they have Annaprasanna or weddings, they give you, something back. And invariably, it is a small idol, of Krishna or Ganesha or Shiva, depending upon the person. So then we bring it home. And for me, I just don't know what to do with it, because it just, in the beginning I was putting it on my shrine. Now my shrine is full. So what is the solution to that? I mean, you can't throw it, and it's collecting.
Well, let me answer that, and then you can come to your second question, so that I don't get lost from the first one. That is a problem. In India, it was a problem for me, not because I would go to Annaprasans and so forth and people giving me idols, but I was often asked out to speak. And when I would speak in India now, there's this tradition of felicitating all of the speakers. And so I would be felicitated with a big bunch of flowers, and that's no problem. I take them, enjoy them for a day, and then put them outside as compost. But then they would always have some sort of trophy or something, like athletic trophies. And depending on how big the occasion was and how rich the organizers were, there'd be sometimes big things and sometimes little things. But they always have something like a medallion with a picture of Swami Vivekananda, or some other sacred image on the And so then I've got all of this hardware to take, and I'm a monk. I don't keep all of these things. And I've got a room. I just have one room. I don't have a house. Like here, I've got one room. There also I had one room, not a house. So where to keep all of these things? So it is a problem. I got so that I dreaded going and getting all of these felicitations. Because one more thing to... And you don't like to throw them out. You don't drop them in the garbage. A sacred deity or something like that. You shouldn't do that. So what I suggest, I'm sure that there are other ways that are easier, but what I know is okay and what works is to wait for some time until you've collected several, put them on your shrine until you get a chance, and then you go to Galveston or somewhere and put them into the ocean. Just offer them into the ocean. That's offer them with a prayer, and that's that. It's with paper images and so forth, posters and things like that, or calendars that people give you, and they've got a sacred image, and so you don't want to just dump it in the garbage or something. Then you can burn those and offer it to Agni. But don't make a general garbage fire. Of course, it's not allowed anywhere nowadays anyway. But just make a simple place where your Agni is the Vedic deity, as most of you know, the Vedic deity who carries prayers and offerings to the gods. That was the Vedic worship was through fire. And so you'd make offerings into a fire, and Agni would take the offerings up to the gods. And so you're offering it to sacred Agni. It's not a garbage incineration. It's offering it to Agni to return it to the elements. So those are the two ways that I know. And second question.
Okay. Now the second question has got nothing to do with it. This is
Yes.
It's based on your talk on isness.
Yeah.
When you had given the talk about different methods of meditations, you had said that one of the method is to meditate on the existence, just the isness of Brahman.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know how to pose the question. Okay. when we meditate on the isness, that is the existence of Brahman all around us, in us, what is the position of the small self? You know, like the mind because if I'm meditating that everything around me and me is existence, is Brahman, what happens to the mind, to the body and all that?
Yes, that's a good question. When I gave that description of that meditation in last week's talk, I believe it was, then I was speaking from the standpoint, I probably didn't make this clear, but because it was meditations on the self, I was speaking from the standpoint of one who is seeking, who am I? What is myself? But my real self, not the phenomenal self, not Swami Atmarupananda, who was born at such and such a time in such and such a place, but who I really am, my spiritual identity, the image of God within, as Christians would say. And so, in feeling existence, I'm feeling identified with existence itself. Now, for one who you can do that from a devotional standpoint as well. One of the main differences, I keep forgetting that I've actually got water here. Just a moment. One of the distinctions between the path of devotion and the path of self-knowledge, the path of jnana, is that in self-knowledge you start with your own self. Who am I? Seeking my fundamental identity with Brahman. But I'm looking not for where is Brahman, but I'm looking for who am I? And so when I try to feel existence, I'm feeling I am existence. And so that ocean of existence I feel is centered here because that's where my sense of self is located right now, but I'm trying to expand it out without limits. For a devotional person, however, the ocean of existence is God. And if I take a non-dualistic foundation for my devotion, which is quite good and quite possible, then I'm the wave on the ocean. I'm also water. A wave is what? A wave is nothing but water which has taken form. When a wave on the ocean, it goes for some time and then it subsides. When it subsides, where do you find the wave? Is there a cellophane bag that you can pick up and say, well, this is the wave, but all the water is drained out? No. There was nothing but water to begin with. And so that ocean of existence, that isness, is God, and I'm like a little wave in that ocean. So from the devotional standpoint, the standpoint is the wave always belongs to the ocean. The ocean doesn't belong to the wave. And so I belong to God. God doesn't belong to, that is, God is not under me. I'm under God. I'm a wave in the ocean of God. God isn't a wave in the ocean of me. For one who's strictly non-dualistic, yes, even God is a wave on the ocean of myself, but that's not the devotional standpoint. And so there are these two ways. So if I'm doing it from a non-dualistic standpoint, from the standpoint of self-knowledge, that ocean of existence is me. There are no bounds to my infinite being. And if I'm devotional, then there's no bounds to the being of God, and I'm simply a wave on that ocean of God. So you had a question. So wait until he gets the microphone to you up here, Binky, and the gentleman right here in the white jacket. Just a moment. He'll give you a microphone. We ask you to speak into the microphone because this is going out to others, and so they want to hear the question also.
My name is Satyanarayana. I come from a southern region of India.
Good.
I grew up as a Hindu, visiting mostly Vishnu temples and performed Vishnu pujas and some other festivals. Now I come to United States and I visited the Gujarati temples,
Uh-huh.
like there is one in Houston.
Yes.
So where the emphasis is not on Vishnu or incarnations of Vishnu like Rama and Krishna, but on philosophers. And that's one I find it difficult to understand. Like I read about Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa and his philosophy, and like that there were several philosophers from times, centuries, thousands of years ago. And so now I see that people, some of the Hindus, go to Sai Baba temples, and I have no idea why they do that. And so mostly visited Vishnu temples. But I see in the north, there is a lot more emphasis on some of the saints and philosophers. And it appears to me that there is less emphasis on Vishnu or incarnations of Vishnu like Rama and Krishna. And so that is a question which I find it difficult to reconcile.
Yes.
Why is that?
Yes, well, that's a good question. And first of all, of course, in India, you have thousands of years of tradition, and then so many different sampradayas. The Western or the English word sect or denomination is not really a good equivalent of a sampradaya in India, because a sect gives the idea of people belonging to a group and not recognizing the other group, or our group is right and other groups are wrong. But in general in India, though there was some of that, the general idea that I belong to a sampradaya, or I belong to a tradition of Vishnu worshippers and so forth. Shiva worshippers are okay, but this is what I do. So in India, you have people of all different traditions who have lived there for thousands of years and developed temples and traditions, and then family lineages which sometimes pertain to a particular lineage. Here in the West, you don't have that. Hinduism has come here from the time of Swami Vivekananda. Hindu teachings came here. And so speaking first of our Vedanta societies, which this is one of the Ramakrishna Mission, we were founded in order to teach Vedanta philosophy in the West. And what Swami Vivekananda wanted was, excuse me, for the Vedanta principles to spread through the world. He had seen the damage that both Christian and Muslim missionaries in the world had done in different countries, where they came in with the idea that there's only one way, and everything else is wrong, and also the practice of these two missionary religions of turning. In the case of Christianity, it spread in the last 500 years through European missionaries, and so they went into Africa and Asia, different countries, and turned everyone into little Europeans. And the Muslims missionaries would turn everyone into Arabs. So Swami Vivekananda didn't want to do that. Even now in a Muslim country like Iran, where I've traveled, and I know many, many Iranians, there's still, after 1,000 years, there's still anger among Iranians that they were forced to accept Arab culture, because they had their own much more ancient culture, Persian culture. So Swami Vivekananda saw the harm that had come by forcing culture, and believe it or not, this is going to get back to your question in a minute, but this is preparation. Swami Vivekananda didn't want Hinduism to be spread in that way. He didn't want it to go out as a conquering religion, replacing other religions or telling other people that you are wrong, you have to do it our way. What he wanted was for the principles of Hinduism to go out and be spread among people, and for people to take from that what they wanted. Because Swami Vivekananda, one of his contributions to social thought, not just religious thought, but to social thought, was that each country has its own ideal. Each country has a purpose for which it's alive. And that as long as that ideal is strong, the country will be strong. But if that ideal is weakened, the country itself will become weak and eventually might die, as has happened with many cultures around the world. And so he wanted the principles of Vedanta to be taught and shared in different countries, not to turn Americans into Hindus, but in order to spread the principles and let the people of America, France, South Africa, China, Japan, Brazil, take those principles and express them in their own way. And so that's why in our Vedanta centers, again, I'll get to the larger question in a moment, in our Vedanta centers, the emphasis has always been and continues to be on teaching. That is, teaching the principles of the religion and how to follow it, how to practice it, the principles of meditation. And again, like Deepak's question about keeping a shrine in the home, that's a general question that can be applied in a general way. So I, as a follower of Ramakrishna and Vivekananda, I would never sit here and tell people, well, now, first, if you want a personal shrine, first you get an image of Krishna, and then you get a tulsi plant, and you offer tulsi leaves every day, and then you do this and you do that, and you keep tulsi beads for doing your japa, and so forth. No, I would never dare to tell people that. If people want to worship Krishna, good. Krishna is God. Krishna is the divine itself, manifested in human form. And so if they want to worship Krishna, good. If they want to worship Rama, good. If they want to worship Shiva, good. If they want to worship Jesus, good. If they want to worship Buddha, good. If they want to follow Islam, good. So you'll find that, especially in the Ramakrishna mission, we don't promote a particular type of worship. We have, as the center of our focus, Ramakrishna, Sarada Devi, and Swami Vivekananda, mainly because it's their ideas that we're teaching. As Swami Vivekananda said, Sri Ramakrishna didn't come to institute his own worship. He didn't come to tell people you should worship me. He came to give life-giving and universal ideas. And so again, that's what we stress. Now, coming to your problem as an individual who comes from a Vaishnava tradition and who comes to America, I'm new to Houston, so I can't speak. People who have been in Houston much longer may be able to fill in information that I can't. But in America in general, you find all types of Hindu traditions and Hindu societies where people who are Vaishnavas gather, people who are Shaivas gather, people from different regions, according to their regional association, they gather and so forth. And so there's room for all of that, and we're not against any of it. We think all of it is good. But our own contribution is the ideas which can help everybody in whatever path they're following and in whatever form of life they are. And some of the other groups that have come to this country, organized groups, like Chinmoy Mission and so forth, which does very good work, their emphasis is on teaching the scriptures. They do other good things too, but their main emphasis is on teaching the scriptures. And so I can say that for myself, and this is speaking purely personally, not speaking from the standpoint of the Ramakrishna Mission, but me personally, what I personally am interested in, though I did puja every day for many, many years, and I've done big pujas as well as small daily pujas, and it was a wonderful practice for me. But at this point in my life, I'm not at all interested in that. What I'm interested in now is meditation and in understanding and in teaching, and in trying to go deeper into that aspect of spiritual life. That doesn't mean that the other is bad. That nourished me for many years. It's very good. But I personally would not be able to run a center here if this became a regular temple with people bringing coconuts and other things to offer, and I'm spending the whole day going to the shrine and offering and doing arati and blessing babies and all of that is good. It's wonderful. But it's not something that I can do. And so there's a place for this sort of society also. There's a place for that. But there's a place also for this as well, and so that's what we offer. And so, for a person like you, it's mainly finding a place, if there is a place that offers what it is that you need, And aside from that, keeping your own practice at home. Keeping your own practice at home. One of the wonderful things about Hinduism is that it's really not a temple-based religion. There are countless temples in India. Practically every rock in India can be turned into a shrine. Every tree in India can be turned into a shrine, and that's one of the great things about India and about Hinduism. But Hinduism isn't dependent on any of that. It doesn't need any temple. It doesn't need any shrine. The place of Hinduism is in the heart of the individual. And so there, you can always approach God as you understand God, be it Krishna or Rama or Vishnu or any other aspect of God. You can approach that and do your worship there. And in your own home, you can have your shrine and offer yourself there. As far as having a community, that's a more difficult thing. Then you have to find people who are of a similar mind and similar bent. But that's why there's so many community Hindu temples in America now, because there are groupings of people who have a similar orientation, and that's a good thing. One other thing let me say, in answer to your question, is that most people here who are the first generation immigrants who have come here, which is most of the people present today, not all, but most of the people present today are first generation immigrants, they find that their children, they don't have the same connection to India and the same connection to temples and worship in the temples and the traditions and the customs and celebrations and all of that. That coming here, they've lost that connection just by the fact that it's not part of the social life here. They've grown up in schools, grown up with friends, grown up in clubs and so forth, the sports and things where none of that has any place. Not that that's good or bad. It's just a neutral fact. It is neither good nor bad. It's just a fact of where they're growing up. And so, for the second generation of those of Indian origin but not of Indian birth, then you find that what they often want and need is more the ideas and the teachings that they can practice in their daily life, at work, at home, at leisure, on vacation, etc. And so my own feeling is that in the future, this type of work that the Ramakrishna Mission does, and some others like Chinmoy Mission and some others do, that will have an ever greater importance here. There was a Swami Dayananda Saraswati who passed away a few years ago. What is it, 3-4 years ago, something like that. Who worked here in America and other countries, and also in India. He had the Gurukulam. He found that when he first started working, he started as a disciple of Swami Chinmayanandaji, and then he separated and started his own work. And at first, he found that his work was mainly among first-generation Indian immigrants, because they were receptive, they knew the background, and he could easily, get a gathering of first generation. But then he discovered, after some time of thinking, that if I direct all of my energy just towards the first generation of Indian immigrants, the second generation are not interested. And then what's going to happen if the stream of immigration begins to die down? So I have to make my teachings applicable to the second generation also. I have to direct myself to them because they're not interested in what the parents are interested in so much. They have become Americanized. Some of them don't want anything to do with Hinduism. Unfortunately, that's very unfortunate, but it happens to many. But those who do want something very different from what the parents wanted. They don't want to know what day should I fast on, and what puja should I do, and all of that. They want to know basic life-giving principles that will help them in their everyday life. And so that's, you could say, that is more the focus that you'll find in the Ramakrishna Mission outside of India. So, any other? Yes, and then I'll come over there. Yes. I'm sorry. Simanti had a question. She was the first one to raise her hand, actually.
So I come back to the same question what Shapna asked, which is coming back to the meditation on the self and
Yes.
your own existence. So if I think about it, our existence is our physical body, our mind. Beyond the mind, when you try to find out who you actually are, how do you focus to that who you actually are? So when you do the meditation, how do you carry that forward?
That's a very good question. How to focus on that which is beyond the body and mind, because the body and mind is all that we know. In the beginning, there's not a easy way to begin, but there's a way that becomes easy quickly. In the beginning, you sit there and you don't, well, what am I doing? There's nothing to hold on to or anything. But quickly it becomes easy if you stay with it. And that is to practice the witnessing mode, the Sakshi Bhava. And that is there are different ways to do that also. So let me tell a couple of ways, actual techniques that you can use. One way is just to go through a process of thought every time when you sit until you begin to get the hang of it, and then you don't need to go through the process. You can go straight to feeling yourself to be the witness. You sit and you think that, okay, I am aware of the world around me. So I see the world. I look at the world. I interact with the world. But I'm the one who is looking at the world. I'm not the world. I'm the one who's looking at it. And so the world is an object of my perception. I see the world. I touch the world, feel it, I smell it, I hear it. But I'm the one who is perceiving it. I'm not the perceived, I'm the perceiver. But then this body, I perceive the body also. Even if I close my eyes, I still feel the body. The body, I can feel the top of my head, I can feel the bottom of my foot, I can feel my back, I can feel every part of my body. I'm the one who is experiencing the body. I perceive the body, so the body is an object of my perception. But then what about my mind? I see my thoughts. My thoughts come and go. Images come and go, sensations come and go, the words come and go, memories come and go. The mind is nothing but its thoughts. It's not that the mind is an organ that's secreting a substance called thought. It's that the mind is thought. Thought is the mind. And so I can see all of my thoughts. If I can see my thoughts, it means I'm not my thoughts. My thoughts are objects that I'm perceiving. I can look at them. You can say, well, what about the unconscious mind, Swami? That I can't see. Well, it's because it's unseen, it's unconscious. But as you go deeper in spiritual life, and this takes a long time, this is after you've gone deep in spiritual life, the unconscious mind itself becomes conscious. And you see it just like you see the conscious mind. And so not just like it, but you can see it like in a way similar to seeing the conscious mind. And so that also is an object. It's not who I am. The unconscious mind also is something that I can get to the point where I can see it as an object. So even now it's an object. It's just an unseen object working under like the electricity in the walls. It's making the lights work and everything else, but it's hidden from our view. So the unconscious mind is like that, doing things without us seeing it, but it's also an object. So I see the external world, I'm aware of my body, and spend a few moments or even a minute or two just being aware of your body. Just I can perceive my body, it's an object, and then I can perceive my thoughts. But I'm the one who perceives. And so in that way, by cycling back and forth in the same session, you're thinking of the external world, thinking of my body, thinking of my thoughts, slower than I'm doing now, observing my thoughts. But in all cases, I'm the perceiver. I'm not the perceived. It's what's called technically in Vedanta, Drug-Drishya Viveka, the discrimination between the seer and the seen. It's based on the fundamental notion that the seer, the one who perceives, is fundamentally different from the perceived, that which is an object. In that way, if you think, and you think repeatedly that way, day after day, you begin to get a sense that, well, I'm the light of perception itself, not a light that I can see. If I visualize a light and think that I'm that light, well, then I'm visualizing an object. The very fact that I can visualize it means that it's another mental object. But I can get the idea that I'm the unseen seer. I can't ever become an object. I can't see myself as an object. but I'm that which sees everything else, including the mind and the body. And so in that way you begin to get this feeling for being the unseen seer. I am the light of perception itself, which can never be perceived. And when you do that, then you begin to get a sense of consciousness itself. You begin to get an intuitive sense of consciousness itself. And then you can just sit as the witness and realize, okay, I see the body, the mind, everything around me, and I can just be the witness. And as you practice that at the time of meditation, it forms a habit. And then afterwards, even when you're working and doing other things, you can have that sense that I'm not involved in any action. Action is going on in the field of my perception, but I'm the witness of all of it. I'm uninvolved in all action. I say I'm going to walk from here over to the door. But no, once I get that sense, begin to get that sense of being the perceiver and not the perceived, I see that this body is moving in relationship to the door, but I'm the light which is illumining the whole thing. I'm in the same place I always was. If I fly to India, if I go to the moon, I'm where I always was. I'm the light of perception in which all of these things are changing. The scenes in front of me are changing, but I don't change. I'm still the light of perception. So that's one way. Another way, which is similar, not contrary, but just a different way of getting into it, is a practice that Ramana Maharshi used to teach. And it's associated with Sanskrit words, which I will give, very simple Sanskrit words that all of you can understand, but you don't need to use the Sanskrit, but I'll use it because that's the way it was taught. And that is, you are working with the breath. When you breathe in, you ask the question, ko hum, who am I? Ko hum. And you try to withdraw. You know, you've already thought about it, that I'm not the objects of the world, I'm not the body, I'm not the mind. And so you're trying to sort of pull back into the perceiver, the unseen seer. So ko hum as you breathe in, ko hum, ko hum. And then you hold the breath for a moment and you think, so hum, I am he. Or one can also say saham, I am she, the Divine Mother. But of course, the soham or the saham is not gendered. Brahman is neuter, that which is beyond gender, so it doesn't matter. So a moment where you think soham, I'm just the unseen seer, and then you breathe out naham, naham. I'm not the body, I'm not the mind, I'm not the objects around me. So koham, who am I? Soham, I am he. Naham, I'm not any of this. And just with a gentle, subtle push of the will, you push away all that is object to you. The idea is that anything that you can see as an object, no matter how subtle, is not who you really are. Let me say one more thing, one last thing, and then I'll go to Jayanta, and then if there's time, I'll come to you for a question. That is, the question comes for a non-dualist, that, okay, you've distinguished between the seer and the seen, but I thought that everything was one reality. Well, yes, there's a higher state where you realize, that, which Ramakrishna mentions many times, that everything is made of consciousness. Then there's no rejection of anything. But the value of the two exercises I just gave is that right now we don't know what consciousness itself is. So to say that everything is consciousness doesn't mean anything. So first we have to separate the sense of self from all objectification and know that I'm the light which illumines everything. Even in death, I am there as the light which illumines death. Even in deep sleep, I'm the light which is there illumining deep sleep. The fact that I don't know anything, illumining that. But then later, once we have known pure consciousness itself, a higher state is when we see everything is made of consciousness. Okay, Jayanta. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, yeah, I didn't read it. Okay.
Hello, Pranam Swamiji.
Yes.
Well, I have a question. So I've been reading about the spirituality, and I can understand the pure consciousness and the happiness which I feel when I drop my mind. But I mean, I want to understand from a practical point of view that you know, when we are born and as we grow up, there is this ego, which is all the time creating conflicts. And right now, I mean, if we don't communicate with our pure consciousness, we have this filter curtain of mind and the senses which we talk. And in a day-to-day life, we are always told you need appreciation, you need approve, you need this is good, this is bad. And I mean, this ego thing, okay, it doesn't make us feel the happiness.
No.
And a small baby is born, and something happens. In 10 years or 15 years, this ego comes. And I think it's the society which tells us you need approval, you need appreciation, this is good, this is bad. And it's just like, I mean, how we can get rid of this thing.
Okay, good question. Next will be Jayanta, who's seated here, Binky. And so I'll answer your question. He'll be next, but first your question. It's a good question. Yes, society does emphasize the ego and the need to be egocentric, the need to be selfish, the need to be aggressive, the need to sell yourself, and so forth. That's particularly true in modern society. It's always been true to some extent, but it's particularly true in modern society. And before it wasn't, society didn't teach you had to sell yourself and so forth, that you had to promote yourself and all of that. Now, if you do anything, the first thing you're told that you need to do is to promote yourself. You've got to get your own website where you put your picture and tell all of your virtues and everything, and then you have to learn how to do an interview for a job and everything where you promote yourself. So everything is centered around the small self. Now, the small self is an evolutionary necessity. The baby is born without a sense of separate self. It's there latent. The baby has some scars from the past, but they're not yet active. But they haven't become active. And so the baby is born into the world without a sense of separate self. It doesn't know its distinction from its mother. It doesn't know its distinction from the environment. It doesn't know how to control its own body because the body is just there. And so the baby just has what they call oceanic perceptions. It just sees this ocean of sensations. It hasn't learned to pick out individual objects. And so the baby has to learn how to distinguish its body from the environment. It has to learn to distinguish its mother from itself. It has to learn to distinguish its father, its brothers and sisters. It has to gradually learn to distinguish the other things in order to function. So all of that is going to form an ego. But let me say first, again, let me emphasize again first that before the but, that that's necessary because the baby can't function in the world without learning those things. But the problem is that we go way beyond that, teaching the baby how to function in the world with objects, external objects, and distinguishing itself and so forth. We go way beyond that, and then again, to teach the child, it's got to be aggressive, it's got to demand this and demand that, and it's got to... And so we go on emphasizing this separated individual which is in conflict with the world around it. And so that's particularly a problem of modern society. It's always been there in all societies to some extent, but until modern times it was much less prevalent. So in the modern world we have to learn, first of all, to avoid, once we're grown and old enough to realize it, as you have, or your question shows, we have to learn to avoid the messages of society. We have to learn to separate ourselves from the messages of society and give ourselves other messages. That's where spiritual reading, meditation, getting spiritual instruction, all of that comes in. Learning what the truth is. And so first to recognize that a functioning ego is necessary in order to progress. So the goal of spiritual life is to transcend the ego, but not to prematurely kill the individual ego. Ramakrishna therefore used to speak in terms of the ripe ego and the unripe ego. It's the unripe ego that causes all of the problems. The unripe ego is that which says, oh, I am Swami Atmarupananda, I'm a big shot, I lived in India so many years, and I learned this and I learned that, and now I tell people this and I tell people that, and I go here and I go there, and people like me and people love me, and this and that. That's the unripe ego. I'm better than you are, and so forth. That's the unripe ego. The ripe ego is that which says, I am a child of God, or I am a wave on the ocean of God, or I am the self which is in all beings. I'm one with all beings. That's the ripe ego. That when Buddha, after he attained to nirvana, he had transcended the ego. But when he came back to awareness of the world around him from nirvana, under the Bodhi tree, he addressed Mara, the tempter, in the Buddhist tradition, said, "O thou builder of this tabernacle, I have found you out. I have known you for who you are. No more will you build these rafters of delusion," and so forth. Well, who was that I that was speaking? It was the ego of the Buddha, but it was the ego of illumination. When Sri Ramakrishna is speaking to his devotees, who is speaking? It's the ego, but it's the ego of illumination. We don't yet have that, but what we can have is the mature ego of a devotee, or in the case of one on the path of knowledge, of a seeker on the path of knowledge, who's seeking to know the true self, not this self. So that's as much of an answer as I can give right now, because I do want to get Jayanta's question, and then if you still have a question, I'll take those two quickly.
Okay. Maybe basic question. How do you know that we are spiritually progressing, like we are coming, doing things and all this? So what are the measures? Like, how do I know where I am, or?
That's a very good question, and a question that every spiritual aspirant has, a question that anyone on the spiritual path has, because we often feel that I'm not getting anywhere. I'm practicing and practicing, I still don't know how to meditate, I still get impatient, I still get angry, sometimes we feel that I was better before I came on the spiritual path, and now I'm worse than I was to begin with. First of all, that's not true. A person on a spiritual path is not worse than they were to begin with. The fact is that a person on a spiritual path becomes more sensitive to who they are and how they act and how they react than they were before. And so they notice all of the things where they're not living up to their own ideal. And so that noticing makes us sometimes feel that, gee, I'm worse than I was before. No, you weren't worse before. You're better than you were before because you're noticing the problems that you have. That itself is a good sign. You're more aware of what you should do and what you shouldn't do, what's acceptable, what's not acceptable according to the ideal I've put before myself. So that itself is a good sign. It means that you have discrimination. Also, there's another factor there, and that is that before you started on the spiritual path, and saying you means everybody, you're sort of like your thinking and everything was sort of muddy as far as such things go, and so the issues didn't arise because you didn't even think it was an issue, but now it has become an issue because you're following a spiritual path. So further than that, how do you judge how far you have gone? Well, one other preliminary thing say, and then I'll just give two quick points. A Holy Mother once said when someone told her that, Mother, I've been practicing japa now for several years, I don't feel any progress, I'm not getting anywhere. The Mother said, no, you are progressing. If you are doing any practice, even elementary practice, you are progressing. But you're like a person who was asleep in his bed, and 4 men came in the middle of the night and picked up the 4 posts of the bed and carried it a long distance, but you're still sleeping. And so in the morning when you wake up, you haven't opened your eyes, but you're lying there in bed and you're waking up, and you're not yet ready to open your eyes, but you're aware of your waking self and all of that, still just enjoying the fact that you're lying there. You think that you're still in your bed in your home, but actually you've been carried miles away and you don't know it. And so that's the case of anyone who's on a spiritual path, that if you're following a spiritual path, if you have done anything, then you are moving forward. It's just that the signs of it haven't yet shown themselves. And that oftentimes I've seen very ordinary people who are devotees, by the end of their life, suddenly you saw a tremendous transformation. Suddenly, all that regular effort, however little that they were doing, that it paid off in the end. And so then for actual signs that you can look for, one thing is that you become you should gradually become more unselfish, and you should develop more sympathy for others. Those also may not be immediately evident, but with time you'll begin to see that if you can remember what you were like before, you gradually begin to see that no, I do have more sympathy with others, and I am less selfish. I am less insistent that I always have my way and so forth, and that the whole world should revolve around me. And things that used to matter so much to me, I find that it doesn't really matter so much. So these are progressive things, but those are signs. Less ego, more sympathy, and many things that used to bother you just don't bother you so much. Okay, one last question here. And time is already up, but you had your hand raised long ago.
Thank you. So Swamiji, my question was, I've just lost two close family members. I come from North India and my husband is from East India. So what I noticed was the rituals were pretty different between the two, and I lost them in 5 days difference. So there was a lot of confusion about what one should do and not do. I mean, how do you reconcile all that? How do you know that you've done the right thing? And what would your suggestion be for a departed soul? How do you remember them?
Yes, that's a very, very important question. Because time is already up, I won't be able to give a satisfactory answer, but I will answer briefly. The first thing is that what you do is not so important as that you do something. The very fact that East India has some practices, North India has other practices, West India has practices, South India has practices. Within the same state, there may be differences from region to region. And then if you go to other religions, the Muslims do one thing, Hindus do quite different, Christians do different, Jews do differently, Buddhists do differently. And so either it's the case that one way is right and all the others are wrong, but that can't be the case. How could that be the case? So it's the fact that you do something. It does, in this case also, like with the shrine, I said the shrine has a subjective effect, but it also has an objective effect. Doing something for the departed, it has an effect on you, because your relatives, whether through marriage or through blood or through friendship, are all inside of us as well as outside. And so what you do affects the person that has been internalized inside of you, because they live inside of you also now. It's not that we're like billiard balls that we don't interpenetrate. No, we do interpenetrate. People get inside of us. And that's why like losing a person who's very dear to us is so painful. So doing something, it helps to harmonize and to, I'm trying to think of a common English word, but it's not coming. But I try to resolve whatever issues I might have with the loss of this person inside. But it has an objective effect also. That is, it helps the soul who has departed as well. And so there, it's not so much that whether you follow the right tradition or the wrong tradition, it's that you do something, and by doing something which is a tradition, a ritual, you are joining with the millions of other people who have done this for long ages. And so it has the combined power that a ritual acquires through having been done by many, many people over long ages. And so it has an objective effect also. It helps the soul who has departed. And it also helps, almost as necessary, I don't mean this in a selfish way, but almost as necessary, the person who is within you, the relative who is inside, that has gone inside of you, because there's an intimate connection between the two. They're not two different people. It's that the person out there is also inside of you. And so it helps both objectively and subjectively, and by that also it helps the person. So I want to get into what you should do, because that, again, you have your family traditions, and even within your family you have two different traditions. And so that's complicated enough, and either one is good. And I've even known people who have multi-religious families where they have different religions, not just the different regions of India within Hinduism, but different religions in the same family. And they may do a combination of rites, Hindu, Jewish, Christian, etc., for the person, and all of that is good. One last thing I'll say, on a personal note, I've told it here, some people have heard it before, that when I took my sannyasa, we have 2 days before the actual ceremony of sannyasa, when we become swamis, we perform our own shraddha ceremony, our own funeral ceremony, because we won't have progeny, and so we'll have nobody that can perform our shraddha. So we offer pindas to ourselves, Atma Pinda it's called, that is the offerings to oneself, and we also make offerings to our parents, even if they're still alive. And so Swami Vidyatmananda, an American Swami of the order who passed away many years ago, he wrote in his book, A Yankee and the Swamis, that when he took sannyasa and made offerings to his parents, who were from a lineage of New England Puritans, who don't believe in any symbolism and don't believe in any other religion but Protestant Christianity and Calvinist Christianity, very sort of severe type of Christianity. He said that when he offered the pindas to his parents, who were still alive, at the time, he thought, well, what a great surprise my New England Puritan parents are going to find when they die, and waiting for them in heaven are these sticky rice balls that I offered to them in Bellermut. But when I did that, I tried to do it with, and he did also, but when I did it with as much sincerity as possible. And after the ceremony, I found that making the offerings to my parents who were still alive, I found that after the ceremony, their attitude towards what I was doing had changed completely, radically. From being very upset that I was taking sannyasa and a foreign tradition and giving up the way of my ancestors, to a full blessing of what I was doing. And I attribute it to the fact that I did the Shraddha ceremony. My parents are Christian. They certainly would not recognize the Shraddha ceremony. But the fact that it is a sanctified ritual with power, and I did it, it even helped my living Christian parents. And so ceremonies have power. So all you have to do is to do what you do sincerely, and the effect will be there. So it's already long after time, I'm sorry. I'll stop here. Announcements before the Arati, and the closing chant and Arati. Tuesday and Thursday we'll have the usual classes. Tuesday night at 7:30 will be the Gita class. Thursday will be the life of Sri Ramakrishna and his divine play at 11 o'clock, 11 until 12. Everyone is invited to both. And then those who want to come for a video of a lecture, they're most welcome to come. And there will be Arati as well. It's just that I won't be here. So that is Sunday. Then I'll be back for the Tuesday class and Thursday class of next week. So this week they'll continue, next week they will continue. Oh no, I'm sorry, I was about to correct myself anyway, yes, that this Tuesday and Thursday I'll give the class. Next, the Tuesday of the following week, Swami Atmajnanananda from Washington, D.C. will be here. And so he will be giving a talk, a satsang. It's not a talk, but a satsang that Tuesday night. So not this coming Tuesday night, but the week after that, Swami Atmajnanananda from Washington, D.C. Some of you know him, but he's a delightful Swami. He's been here before, a very delightful Swami, and so he will be here. So Tuesday night, in place of the Gita class, we will have him. I'll be back, but he will give a satsang. And then on Thursday, I'll give, the following week, I'll give the class. But then the following Saturday and Sunday, Swami Sarvadevanandaji, the head of this center and the head of the Hollywood centers, will be here. And so we'll have a a satsang with him Saturday night, again, not this week, but the following week. And then Sunday he will give the talk. So that's the next 2 weeks of programs. So I give a closing chant and then the arati. Om Dyo Shanti Antariksham Shanti Prithvi Shanti Apas Shanti Oshadaya Shanti Vanaspataya Shanti Vishwe Deva Shanti Brahma Shanti Sarvam Shanti Shantireva Shanti Sama Shantiredhi Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace is in the heavens, peace is in the sky, peace is